Everyone, Sean O'Connor here from Macabre Daily, and I have none other than Adam Wakefield, the author of The Usher.
Hey, hi, Sean.
Hi. This is an incredible book that we're going to start chopping up in a second. But Adam, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, hey, look, you have an open door policy. We were just discussing that I'm having you back to talk about Dawn of the Dead.
Favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, right? And look, I mean, maybe, I don't know, we live close-ish to each other. We're in the same state, yes. But the truth of the matter is, I could almost get to North Carolina by the time it would take me to pull into your driveway.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We're up in the Left Hook, Western New York there, up by Buffalo and Niagara Falls.
But you know what? I'm just thinking, because Dawn of the Dead, the Monroeville Mall and the Romero Convention, it's not off the charts for us.
Oh no, I did the pilgrimage with my dad and brother for the 45th anniversary, and it was great. Not my first time being there. I'm a fanboy. We'll talk for sure in depth with it.
Nice. Well,
it's the best.
George Romero's got enough accolades about Dawn of the Dead. This is about Adam Wakefield and this incredible book, The Usher. Before we get to the book, tell our listeners and our readers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks. So I'm in Western New York, as I said, right outside of Buffalo, actually exactly in between Buffalo and Rochester, with my family. We have 2 kids, and I work my 9 to 5 in marketing. And yeah, this is my first work out there into the world. I've been writing since I was a little kid, and just thanks to Meg, my wife, was sort of pushed in the right pushed in the right direction right from the beginning of our relationship. And the first of this that's come out of it is The Usher.
Nice. Yeah. And I love that you said the first.
Yeah.
I like, because this book is amazing. You need to keep writing, and you need to keep writing often. And I'm sorry that I'm putting pressure on you, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, no one puts more pressure on me than myself.
Oh, okay. That's fair. That's fair. But your ability to create scene, your ability to create rich atmosphere, your characterization, all of these things just leap off the page. And that's not smoke and mirrors. I would be honest with you. Had I not enjoyed the book, there'd be a lot of questions like, so what do you think about the weather?
Sure.
What's your favorite cookie?
Sure.
What this is, you really, I'm a little mad at you because you kind of tore my heart up a little bit. I'm looking at the cover of the book while I'm talking to you. I should be looking at you. But you kind of tore my heart up a bit, especially by the time you get to that final chapter. Mm-hmm. It is a wallop, and I mean that in the best way possible. So this is of course, this is a spoiler-free conversation, which you're going to be adept at, and is a challenge for me because I have a big mouth. So
I don't know. I think it might be just as challenging for me. But
well, the good thing is I have the power of editing. So if we spoil anything, I can sort it out. But let me go back to our 10 questions that we have.
Sure.
Okay. What was the epiphany moment for you as far as horror goes? Mm-hmm. Because I know that you're a horror fan, and now you are actually part of the tapestry of horror with The Usher. What was that moment where you figured out, like, oh, shoot, this is for me?
I think I sat down. I think I can tell you exactly when it was. I sat down at our dining room table. My mother-in-law, who is currently downstairs in our living room watching our kids while I record this, had given us her mom's typewriter. And I tried to kind of be a pretentious writer for a second and, go old school analog with it and type out a scene. And it kind of felt right. I've always done stuff, digitally in Google and whatever, Google Docs, but just hitting the keys. I wrote about my dead friend, and just a little scene that actually did make it into The Usher, but very briefly. But it just felt right, and I took it from there. I took it seriously from there. There were some concepts of, what I wanted to do if I were to write a book, but that moment, I didn't stay on the typewriter very long. It's just not really, the most plausible idea. But that's the day that I started to take it really seriously.
Nice. Now, what about as a kid? What got you into horror as a kid?
Stephen King, like everything, I'd say at least for books, Stephen King for sure. I remember trying to check out Psycho from our library as a kid, and I think they called my mom and asked her if it was okay. But my dad is a horror junkie.
Nice.
And he still is, you know, and he grew up in... So my family owned a theater when my father was growing up.
Make all the sense in the world. Okay.
So they owned a theater here in our small town, and my father grew up in it. And seeing pretty much any movie that was released during the 60s and 70s for free, he just passed that down to us. And, you know, we watched a lot of scary films growing up, a lot of Twilight Zone marathons a couple times a year on television, things like that. But so it was always around us. When I was a kid, though, I definitely started to read Stephen King more than anything. The Shining, I think, jumped out at me first more than any other piece of literature of his.
I'm with you there. I'm with you. I mean, there's so many interviews that I've done, and Stephen King is that touch point. And then, you know, the great thing about it is, and I think Stephen King would be the first to say this, like, okay, start with me, but then here's your ticket to go explore anywhere that you want to.
Oh, I know.
So a lot of people get into King, and then they, you know, then they go to Barker. Like a lot of people, oh yeah, and then I discovered Barker, and then Barker opened the door for me to you know, discover all these other authors, and it's great. It just you know, it builds those muscles, so to speak.
Yeah,
and it's nothing but fun.
For me, though, I'm sorry to interrupt. For me, I would say yes, there's definitely some classics, Shirley Jackson, Richard Matheson, but I've found that I've been driven more toward just modern horror writers.
Sure.
A lot more, especially over the last couple of years as it's really taken off. There's been such a list of people that have come out that I find myself, aside from going through Stephen King's bibliography furiously at all times, I find myself really just returning to that stuff. There's definitely some hits there that I grew up with. I remember reading The Exorcist and just being scared beyond belief.
I'm still scared beyond belief, you know, that movie.
Yeah. But now I look to people like Nat Cassidy and Clay McLeod Chapman, and you know, the big names of our time that I'm sure King is probably love to push as well.
Please do not sell yourself short. Your name is right there alongside them. Especially you mentioned Nat Cassidy. You know, it wasn't that long ago. Nat and I were talking about, you know, Mary, A Tale of Terror, and then Nestlings, you know, and now he's got Wolf at the Door. But, you know, you're right there beside him, buddy.
Oh, sure. So, I'm just saying, like, for my free time, like, I am, that's what I'm out reading. You know, that's what I'm chasing down at this point is the contemporaries, if nothing else, the people that I think are, like, putting out some pretty fucking awesome work.
This is a crazy time. I'm so happy that you sat behind that typewriter and that you wrote the Usher, because this is an incredible time for horror literature. You know, it feels very much like the paperback boom of the 80s, except there's a lot more distinct voices, and there's queer representation and indigenous representation. You know, there's a lot there that wasn't necessarily there in the 80s, and it just makes it more interesting, you know?
It does, yeah. I love it. I love chasing down I think I'd be bullshitting everybody if I didn't throw Neil into the mix. I mean, Neil McRobert and what he's done with Talking Scared is really sort of, for so many of us, is like giving us a direct conduit to all these wonderful writers.
Yep.
And I just keep listening, keep looking, and a lot of them seem to be at my local library. And again, I'm in this really small town, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, you know what's great, I'll tease Neil about it, is that you beat him to the punch, because Good Boy doesn't come out for another couple of months. You got him. Your book came in October.
I've already pre-ordered my copy of Good Boy. I'm stoked.
I can't wait for him to start doing the rounds. Yeah, we're definitely going to get him on Macabre Daily and have a good conversation with him. But all right, let's bring it back to Adam Wakefield. Damn it.
Sure.
Okay, so the novel relies heavily on nostalgia. I love that you preface this question with the typewriter, because I mean, that is nostalgia right there. The sound of the keys, the feel of it, the heaviness, the weight. You know, it's a metaphor, but nostalgia, I want to get your opinion on this. Nostalgia plays such a heavy factor in the novel. and it is magical and it can transport you and it's transcendent. But what's your feeling on nostalgia also being a bit of a prison and a trap?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it is, right. And I look to my own experiences with my family and my grandparents. So much of the sense of nostalgia that is in this book comes from my grandmother specifically, and the way that she would tell us these stories about when she was younger. And then my grandfather, her husband, was a tailor, and like there was very like old school, you know, history for us growing up about things. And then they saw this industrialization go wrong and turn into globalization, and started to have their opinions about it all. And so I got to see a full swath from these people in how they approach this. But a lot of the nostalgia was really wrapped up in the movie theater. Like, my grandmother used to tell us these stories about growing up in this place. And, you know, her father used to put on these giant performances for kids in our town. Like, if there was a John Wayne movie that was debuting, he would have, you know, people doing lassos, or if it was a war movie, there were tanks in town that they could get from the armory that they would have blocking off Main Street, things like that. It was this whole different time, and it wasn't the best time. I mean, let's be honest, there were a lot of societal problems going wrong, but those like almost hard to believe moments that I was fed as a kid, I guess that's my sense of nostalgia. That's what I wanted to inject in this.
You did.
At the same time, again, that's sort of a trapping, because there were a lot of not so great things going on in the 1950s.
Yeah.
After the war, and, you know, probably a lot of those things maybe helped get us to where we are today. A lot of people still feel that way. You know, products go off the shelf because they're racist in nature, and an entire generation of people throws their hands up and says, well, what about us? You know, we used to put this on our pancakes. What do you mean we can't call it that anymore? And it's like,
yeah,
give me a break. So I think nostalgia is really important, but, you know, it might have its place in the world of things that need to be evolved a little bit. In this, it's just straight from the heart, straight from the stories that I used to hear about my family growing up in this building, and carrying cans of film over to the theater from the train station in the middle of a snowstorm.
Those were heavy. I carried a film can or two myself in the day.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, people, they are not light.
I'm sure.
You brought up a great point, which is I look at nostalgia almost like the nitroglycerin that's carried in the movie Sorcerer or Wages of Fear. You know, it's so fragile and delicate, and it can explode at any time. And all we seem to do with it is shake it. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm hoping, to your point, I'm hoping that there's a way for us to embrace nostalgia, but recognize the pain of others that went along with that, and appreciate that. So it doesn't have to be this just gigantic swath of, well, this is the way I think it is, and I'm not going to listen to anything else. It has to be this. The kid riding the bicycle with the baseball card and the spokes, and he's got the striped tee on, and the dog's chasing behind him. And sure, that happened for a segment of the population, but there was a whole nother segment that it didn't happen for. See, you know, maybe one day we'll be able to, you know, to make that work. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be today. But
punk rock has done a very good job of finding a way to be nostalgic and powerful at the same time, and has to sort of evolve with it. I mean, when I was growing up in Buffalo, early on, there were shows where it was, you know, mostly straight dudes in a basement screaming at each other. Yeah. You know, but from a sense of nostalgia, you know, like the influences, you know, the music itself, the style hadn't evolved too much. The ideas didn't need to, for the most part. But now when you go to these shows, it's very much a mixed, diverse crowd. Isn't that great? Very well represented. Yeah. And I don't, unfortunately, get a chance to go to them as much anymore as a dad, but like, I just know that that's not how it is anymore. So I always look to punk for some sort of northern light.
Well, I go to those shows now and they go, are you picking up your child?
I can't wait for that.
Hurtful.
My daughter loves Idols quite a bit, so I'm hoping that transcends into being a punk when she's a little older.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Keep it going. Keep it going. Okay. We need to talk about John Bradford.
Yep.
So, with any author, there has to be elements of yourself woven in there. Now, John is going through a galactically tough time in the novel, so I don't want to. I have to be careful now because I don't want to pry. It sounds very personal and intimate. But
yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I mean,
yeah, what aspects of John are there? What of Adam is in there with John?
Yeah, so when I was younger, about a decade ago now, I drank like a fish, and I was involved in an accident, and I almost died, and I was arrested, and I had to do the whole thing that goes along with that, and my life is totally different now. We don't even drink. It's been like years now, 7 years I think at this point, and
congrats, man.
Hey, thank you. But two things from that experience sort of inspired the Usher. One was waking up and not knowing if I was alive, which truly was a pretty gut-wrenching feeling. And I had to write about that. And then the other side of it is, what if I didn't survive that car accident? Like, kind of coming to grips with non-existence, right? And the end, and how stupid one can be. And I to this day don't even know what put me in the car. I was at a friend's wedding, and like things just happened, and but it was a big deal, and it almost killed me. And when the dust settled, I was okay. Shortly after that, my grandmother died, and first my grandfather died, then his wife died, and I was helping to take care of them toward the end of their life. So a lot of personal stuff definitely went into this story, and out of it I think came a really pretty honest tale about a guy that John, and again, not entirely all myself, but John, who is sort of at a crossroads and 1 foot in, 1 foot out moment.
Yeah.
And makes a choice to go the right way. And then, the mysterious world of the Usher sort of brings him in, and he finds himself in extraordinary circumstances.
He certainly does. He certainly does. No spoilers.
Yeah.
But there's something about a redemption tale that is just, it's so alluring, because I think the reader, whatever personal experience we bring to the to reading the novel, is there. We all have our redemption arc, no matter how minor they might be. So I think when people read The Usher, when people get this book, and please, the link to the book is going to be in the article. So all you have to do, viewers and readers, is scroll down and you can buy Adam's book right there. And I highly encourage you to do so. Also, look for my review coming shortly to Macabre Daily. I already told Adam, I'm like, it's going to be a love letter. It's real good. But it's true. I'm very excited.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm just so excited for more people to get this book into their hands. But going back to the redemption arc, it is very fulfilling. But I'm not going to spoil it and say that it's all pats on the back and cheers by the end of this novel. You're going to have to read it to find out. And it really, I'm coming to spoiler territory, but it certainly does pack a wallop. Okay.
Yeah, so, it's a weird one. It starts to go pretty. The pacing of it, I wanted it to just, after a certain point, just keep firing and firing and firing.
It sure does. Yeah. Again, I don't want to, I'll just tell the readers that, like all good novels, it takes its time to get where it's going, so you can get that full characterization, so you can get a sense of the world. I want to talk about small towns in a second, because the atmosphere in this book and the setting, the setting is character. It is, but I want you to talk about small towns. But first, I want to talk about the movie theater itself. Mm-hmm. Your history with the movie theater makes perfect sense now, because my question was going to be, how did you land on that? But it's I mean, it's a family heirloom at this point, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. My great grandfather would be the eponymous Usher, who started there in the 20s or 30s, I believe, and kind of
like.
Yeah, right. And he had the whole Usher suit and tour tickets and everything, and had a little flashlight, and he stayed there, and he was there until he died. He died there one night, and that was it. My family ran it for a few more years afterward, but my grandmother wasn't able to really do it. He was sort of the life of the whole place, and that was that. So when I was growing up, this is how I think I like to talk mostly about the character of Frank, who in the story is running the theater. Is my grandmother always used to sort of paint this picture of her father, which we had one photo of him on the wall at their house that would stare at us. And I'd never met him. He died long before I was ever born. So it was sort of weird. But she'd talk about him and tell these stories like he was Santa Claus. And so I was thinking well, what if he was the exact opposite of that?
Yeah.
What if he came off as Santa Claus, but he really wasn't? He was the total, and so that's sort of like it. But the stories of the theater, it was closed down for so long while I was growing up, and then they reopened it and tried to turn it into a nightclub, and it didn't work. And my wife recently was in a play there.
Oh, get out.
Right after I had released the Usher, so I walked in to watch my wife be on the stage at the family history. I felt like I was going to burn up when I walked through the door. But it's a buzz in there. I don't know. It's nothing happening. Nothing really. They turned it into the Republican Resource Center during the election and just ruined it. So we're hoping that some young entrepreneurs maybe purchase it.
It'll happen eventually.
And do something with it. But I just heard all these stories of from my dad, my uncle, my grandmother, my grandfather, who all of them, grew up in this place together running this. And some of that made it into the book, some of the direct stories from them. But the theater still stands right now. It's there, ominously. And I just thought that was such a great setting. I don't know. Some of my favorite stories have connections. Some of my favorite movies have connections to a movie theater, like The Last Picture Show and The Majestic specifically. So I don't know. I just felt like it hasn't really been represented too much in horror outside of Demons. The movie Demons has a theater in it, a couple others. But when it clicked in my head, I figured I can write about this. So
it's fertile ground for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to run down this path.
And it's certainly not, it's not a trope that's like, oh, here we go again, the movie theater. It's not. There really have not been a lot of movies nor books that have been set in movie theaters. So I love the fact that you mentioned Last Picture Show and The Majestic. Majestic doesn't get enough love. I love it so much. I stand for that movie.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
There's something about a movie theater though, and the one that's still standing, the one in your hometown. Those places have ghosts, and it just they take their time though. I'm telling you now, Adam. It'll find the right person or people, and it'll have another life. Just, right person needs to pass by.
Sure, yeah. And who knows? I've certainly looked into it, but I don't think that's realistic at this point.
Well, let me know if you need investors. I'll send you $10.
Sure.
That's all
We'll get a GoFundMe going after this.
There you go. All right, so let's talk about small town. I grew up in Queens. So certainly wasn't a small town. And then even though when I moved out to Long Island, it's a suburbs, but it's still pretty busy. I find a small town setting so delightful because I didn't have that experience growing up. So I experienced nostalgia for an experience I never had, which is kind of weird, but I do. I think a great writer can make you feel that, which you did. Talk to me about your small town experience.
Well, the name of the game was to get the fuck out as fast as possible when I was growing up, for just totally normal teenage reasons of wanting to go, run like a banshee through a city and cause chaos. But both my wife and I decided at a certain point that maybe that wasn't for us. She was living in New York. I was living in Buffalo. And, we both just sort of came together at the same exact moment, and we came here into this back home, and well, a lot of other people decided to do that, and so it gave us this other experience of a small town. So I'll answer that in two different ways. When I was growing up, a small town was kind of 50s. It was kind of a David Lynch experience. Okay. Not quite as G. Willikers as Twin Peaks or anything like that, but there was just such an old vibe going on still. The 70s and the late 60s was still just everywhere. And then our town everything went away before 2008, before the housing bubble, and somehow it was able to survive after all that. Like when suburbs and cities were getting hit, Medina, which is the town that I'm from, survived, and young people started to come back and open businesses, and the restoration boom, if you will, I don't even know what we would call it, of the early aughts or late aughts there, happened here. And so the small town vibe that we moved back to became one of like going out and drinking with the people that you went to high school with. Okay. You know, like, and being able to walk everywhere, which is super convenient. So now it and I guess it always had this vibe. It sort of has carried this very conservative vibe through it. Nowadays, for sure, we're living in a red area, but not quite so when we were kids. But we've seen so many factories come and go, fundamental institutions for our small town come and go. And I think we've just been in a very similar experience of everybody else, just with a lot less color.
Gotcha. I hear you.
A lot less diversity in the small towns is my personal experience. It took going into, the cities for 10 years of my life to really experience what humanity is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that, again, it just evolves and it bleeds out, but, we'll see. Yeah. Let's talk about scares. All right. So, it's easy to talk about, okay, this is my small town experience, and this was the movie theater that was in our family history. When we're talking about scares, though, and constructing a good scare, and this book, this is the chills and dread in the Usher. I mean, the damn hair on the back of my neck would stand up. What do you mind to bring those forth? I'm always curious when I talk to a horror novelist, horror writer. Where do you get it from?
That's a great question, Sean. So Neil Young had this live recording where he talked about you sort of like have to have an antenna up if you want to receive something. And I don't know what that antenna is. For me, I guess it's just locking in and saying, okay, I'm ready now to write something. And it just kind of comes out. I don't know where the scares come from. In this one in particular, I think it's a very, again, the scares come from real life. Some of them, the dread, the existentialism, the finality of John's decisions and, what he's been doing with his life. And now Ruth is gone and, what that means for him. And then once, we jump into this next level, it takes on a whole different face. Sometimes like very almost like comical at times intentionally. So like, I don't know. I've found that like some of my favorite horror scares have come when things are a little contradictory. Like, for example, in Twin Peaks, there's these moments in the red room in one of the movies of the show, whatever. They're laughing at the camera, and there's all these horrible things going on. Coop and Bob are just laughing, and I find that absurdity to be terrifying. And in King's World, there's like Dandelo and there's Martin and all these other like Dark Tower type characters that mix this humor with horrifying things. Yeah. And I tried to, I guess subconsciously, I did a little bit of that in here too. I grew up on, the same movies as everybody else. I loved Freddy Krueger when I was growing up, so there's a little comic relief in a lot of this stuff. But the scares themselves, they come from outer space.
Can I compare, you brought up Lynch, so I'm going to make a comparison that I felt when I was reading the Usher. I love Wild at Heart. It's one of my favorite movies. Your ability to mix the comedic, it's very much like Barry Gifford, his writings, which are completely different. I mean, he's writing like, almost like, neo-noir, and your horror, but your ability to craft a comedic scene, but like Lynch and Wild at Heart, you're laughing, but you're also like, what is happening, and
yeah,
and it works so perfectly and so seamlessly. So I want to commend you on that, because it's not, look, I'm not a writer. I can't imagine it's an easy thing to do, but you do it so well. And it almost comes off at effortless, where you're just chasing that wave from we're having a good time to we're not having a good time whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed by that.
Lynch is definitely was a huge influence in my life. Will always be. Just died recently, but he was wonderful, and the absurdity that he brought, the humanity that he brought to his horror in these truly weird moments, banal life moments that are terrifying.
Yeah.
That's my bread and butter. I just love that. There's, the people in my town are fucking scary. They scare me when I walk down the street,
Yeah.
And it's not because they're all Trump supporting maniacs. It's just that sometimes it's scary when they blow their nose the wrong way, and it's just our human experience. And that level of like suffocation, psychology type stuff, I just love it. I think we should express it,
Oh, hell yeah. And I think, Lynch was like the Zen master of that, of that expression. When did you get into cosmic horror?
I mean, Lovecraft for sure. He always had a place in the lexicon growing up. I don't know. Do we throw the Dark Tower into the cosmic horror?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Because I think there's probably no larger influence on me as a writer than the Dark Tower. That was the most freeing experience, and spoiler free, of course. Probably the most freeing reading experience. Like, I read it and I just kind of saw my whole life in front of me.
Nice.
If I wanted it to be like, I could go out and do this shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's no knock at Steve, or like, I'm not like the greatest writer. It's just like he opened the door. It's like when I watched Night of the Living Dead for the first time, and I realized that these were just a bunch of broke hippies.
Yeah.
That went out in some house in Pennsylvania and made this fucking unbelievable movie. I could do that. David Lynch, I could do that. Anybody could do that. Your kid could do that. And they should. And so some of those like aha moments around these people really inspired me growing up. Fantastic. And the Dark Tower for cosmic horror and everything that it's interconnected with, the weird soup that runs through all that is it breaks down a lot of barriers, for your work. You could decide, like, the thing I'm writing right now is far more linear than the Usher. It's not like that at all, but it was very fun to write in that open-ended way.
Well, I want to cast a wide net here. Anyone who's into weird fiction and cosmic horror and dread and scares and nostalgia, and small towns and complex protagonists, this is a book that you should get your hands on. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to wrap up soon, but one more question for you. Two more questions, actually. The first one being, let's talk about you and what is next on the horizon. What do you have coming?
Next is I have a short story called The Elephant in the Room that is going to be coming out in September. And that's another small town story, but it's about the Evans family. They're a lovely family. You'll enjoy them. And they are just living a happy life. And then a really weird family moves to the block, and things get strange. And it's just, there's something going on in that house.
Oh, I'm getting the Burbs vibe going on.
Yeah, there's something going on. And I mean, maybe everybody has a neighbor like this or an experience like this in their world where the grass is a little taller, and I'm not one of these people that's like, hey, why aren't these people mowing their lawn? But like, grass might be a little taller than everybody else's, and it's a little shadowy over there. You see this in the movie The Burbs with the Klopex house.
Yeah.
It's not quite to that level, but it's this family that moves in, and the father of the Evans family, he investigates, and we see where things go, and then so that's coming in September, and then probably in I can't remember the exact timeline we've laid out, but I think next summer my second full will come out, and that's Werewolves of Elder. And that's a werewolf novel set in a mountain tourist trap of a town in the mid-90s.
Oh.
It's a summertime novel. And, it's about growing up as a kid in the 90s. I don't know. I was like 13, and I used to go camping with my cousin in the Adirondack Mountains, and sort of the pulse of that one, and just everybody getting ripped apart by werewolves the whole time.
Oh, you had me at werewolves. Okay. Two things, if I can put you on the spot.
Sure.
Would you please come back in September? Well, let's call it late August to talk about the short story.
Yeah, I'd love to. We'll definitely be out there.
Great.
Releasing it across, it'll be a digital ebook you can get on Kindle and everything.
All right, great. And then please let me know when the new werewolf novel's coming out, and then we'll get you back on for that and get a review of that as well. We'll get a review for both. But yes, please, and thank you. You had me for both of them. Last question, and then I'll let you go. It's 2025, beginning of a new year. We talked about your stuff coming out that I'm incredibly excited for. What are you excited for in horror in 2025?
Oh, my God. The werewolves, right, with Nat Cassidy, When the Wolf Comes Home. I'm really excited for what King is cooking up behind the scenes with Talisman 3, which seems to have some connective tissue to the Dark Tower. I don't think that's going to come out this year, but... really looking forward to Chuck Wendig's new one, Staircase in the Woods. I'm hoping LP Hernandez has something new this year. I don't know if he does, but you put me on the spot, and I've got about a list a mile long right now, and I'm coming up.
Well, look, I'm going to have you back on soon to talk Dawn of the Dead. Yes, so I'm just going to circle back around to you and Tommy and put you both on the spot.
That would be great.
What about on the big screen? Give me one movie that you're excited for on the big screen.
Well, I wanted to see Nosferatu quite a bit. I know it's out right now, but I had the look of Nosferatu spoiled for me, and so that sort of took that away. I'm really looking forward to The Monkey. Again, I'm just a constant reader, so I will go through all of the adaptations, as good or bad as they are, but that one looks pretty dope.
Same.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
And then we only have to wait until the 21st of February. Yeah, it's right.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say Life of Chuck. I think more than anything, I'm looking forward to Life of Chuck. So we can just forget that. I'm sure The Monkey will be great, but Life of Chuck is going to be the film of the year. It is the one that I've been looking most forward to for probably the year and change that we've all been hearing about what Flanagan's doing.
Flanagan,
I mean, I love that story so much, and Mike's got such a big heart that I think there is no one on earth more equipped to write it for the screen and put it out. I will follow that dude anywhere he goes.
Nice.
And whatever he's doing with Dark Tower, I'm hoping that maybe we get a little glimpse of it at some point this year.
Same. But you know what? Patience comes to those who, I guess, wait. I don't know where I was going with that. But
hey, buddy, you're talking to a Bills fan, all right? I know all about patience.
Adam, this has been an absolute pleasure. Please, everyone, one last time. This is the Usher, and you need to get this book. We're going to have you back, and I truly thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You got it. We'll talk soon.